We're actually defining a new box of the audience. And that new box is actually at the intersection of multiple passion points. So it does sit in the middle. And by the way, we're not trying to be everything to everyone. But if you really look at the consumer today and you look at sports and sports consumption, they are defined, this audience, this next generation of fans, they're defined very differently than all of us.
This is the Snarketing Podcast, for marketers, by marketers, talking to marketers with just a touch of snark. Now, here are your hosts, Valerie, Vespa, and Matt Wurst.
Welcome to another episode of the Snarketing Podcast. Whether you are first discovering us or rejoining us for yet another edition, we are so glad you're here. We've got a great guest who is waiting in the wings to talk with us. But before we get there, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Matt Wurst.
And I'm Valerie Vespa.
And we are excited to be talking with each other and to be here with you. How are you, Valerie?
Good to see you. You look sun-kissed.
Well, you were on vacation for a while. It's the end of summer. I had a few days off. I did not take any time off from LinkedIn. I still was posting every day. But other than that, I was disconnected.
Interesting enough, I noticed a post recently from you on LinkedIn. You've been posting what, daily?
I post once a day. That's what the algorithm is telling me to do.
So I wasn't made aware, or at least you didn't tell me in advance, that you were starting a retail media network?
Yes. Well, I wouldn't say that I've actually gotten everything ready to do this, but it was more tongue-in-cheek. The joke came in response to something that was much more real, which is the fact that I think all of us may be on the cusp of retail media network fatigue. And I wonder if every brand trying to create their own retail media network might be doing more harm than good. You've got Amazon, which makes sense. You've got Walmart, which makes sense. But then you get into like CVS, and I'm hearing rumors that there are some CPG companies that are creating their own. And this is probably the biggest trend in all of marketing and advertising for, the opportunity for brands to become their own reach and distribution network for other brands. But I think a majority of potential advertisers are feeling pressure. Maybe they're feeling influenced unduly by these retailers in their advertising decisions.
Everything you said is completely true. I think brands who work with the OG retail media networks like the Amazons and the Walmarts, have these huge investments with them, understandably, and they have relationships with these other ones too. And I think that it's creating a challenge for these brands who then, when they're, going in to renew their plans for the following year, are getting kind of, I think, put in a position where they're having to increase their investment levels because of, guarantees that they have with. I think there's a very ugly world going on here with this, and I agree. I think it's a mess, and I'm tired of it already.
So what is not giving me fatigue is talking with smart people, and today's guest is definitely someone who falls into that category. So let's jump in and talk to Michael Cohen, CEO of Team Whistle.
We're thrilled to welcome a visionary leader at the forefront of content and entertainment innovation. As the CEO of Team Whistle, Michael Cohen has masterfully orchestrated a growth and transformation strategy that seamlessly merges the realms of social and streaming platforms, entertainment, sports, and the ever-expanding creator economy. Beyond just conceptualizing a strategic vision, he has driven impactful business development initiatives that have shaped the industry landscape. Take it away, Val and Matt.
We're excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
You are someone that my mom would call a mensch, because we've invited a few other guests and some have accepted, some have said they need internal approval, or it's taken 8 to 10 weeks to get sign off. We asked you yesterday, and here you are.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. So Michael Cohen, not to be confused with Donald Trump's attorney, Michael Cohen. But Michael Cohen, you are the CEO of Team Whistle, and you're coming up on your 10-year anniversary. 2 acquisitions later, first by 11 Sports and most recently by DAZN. But would you have predicted that a decade ago, Whistle Sports would still be here today in its incredible success?
Well, thank you for that background. But the reality is that in this industry, there's only one way to survive. That's to be able to constantly adapt and evolve with your audience, your platforms, your brands. And so I think from an early start, the early days of the company, we built this mindset and value into our team, into our culture, where we find ways to make our partners win. And so we have faced insurmountable challenges, shall I say, over the last 10 years. But I also like to say there's nothing that a bunch of smart people, a driven team, and a whiteboard can't solve. So am I surprised that we're here today? No. Was it a linear path to get here? No. But we're here, we're thriving. There's a lot more ahead for the company and for the team.
So Michael, like you specifically, I find this really interesting. Like you weren't in the content space in your history. You were in investment banking and private equity. So tell us, like, how did that come to fruition? How did this come to fruition? And how did your prior positions kind of prepare you for what you're handling now? And
Great question. I would say my background was investment banking, private equity, and consulting prior to the last 10 years. And how has the prior period really prepared me for this? I've always
Mhm.
been around companies either being disrupted or doing the disrupting. So working in an industry where the only constant is change, it felt pretty natural. I'd also say that I've worked across a variety of industries, from media and telecom to diversified industrials and manufacturing companies. So I've had the benefit of seeing a lot of different perspectives, and I think that's allowed me to really connect dots where others can't or others don't see. And that having that various perspectives, having the ability to be agile, and be on the precipice of building in the face of disruption, I think really had prepared me to build in the broader media ecosystem.
You probably owned a lot of suits that you had to wear to work at the time. Do you still own any of those suits? Because your wardrobe requirements probably relaxed somewhat significantly.
Years ago, I was like envious of my dad's tie collection, and so when I ultimately was in investment banking and private equity, wearing a suit every single day to I was going to say school, but to work, I took a lot of pride in my tie collection and in building that tie collection, and with the hopes that someday my son too I'd pass it down to him. It is currently sitting in plastic in my closet. I think I've worn one or two of those suits in the last 5+ years, and that's probably without a tie.
Well, I think the ability to adapt, the innovative culture that you have built and created, um, regardless of the wardrobe that you're wearing. But I think it speaks to you. I've known you a long time. I'm someone who has been in and around content, but you are also, whether you realize it or not, you are a driver of innovation at this convergence, really, of sports and entertainment and technology and creative. But with the rise of all these platforms and the evolution of them, we now have access to our heroes in ways that we might not have 20, 50 years ago. How has the emergence of these platforms changed the way sports, entertainment, media, content is produced and consumed from your perspective?
Yeah, look, I think a few different ways. I think in terms of when we started the company 10 years ago, we had this premise that we asked ourselves a question: if you were to create ESPN today, how would you do it? And we looked back and thought about some key tenets of ESPN, built on the back of cable and satellite providers, going after sports rights, and then distributing those in a one-way linear broadcast to the audience. Then we saw, okay, what the future was going to be built on the back of social media companies. Instead of sports rights, you'd have social influencer or creator rights. And instead of a one-way dialogue, you'd have a two-way dialogue because social media allows that interactivity. And so I think what's happened, and the biggest difference from, shall we say, the Jordan era to the MLS Messi era, is what's happening on the field is not as is almost less relevant to what's happening off the field. And I'd say in some recent research that we've done, nearly 70% of 13 to 34-year-old fans think that stories about athletes are more interesting than the actual games that they play. So, I think it's important in terms of thinking about content. It's not just about seeing the workout videos. It's about seeing the relatable, the human side of these athletes and the world around them, from family life to what they're doing on their day off, rather than what they're doing when they're working out. So I think social media has really been a powerful tool in driving a bit more accessibility to these athletes that we could never see when any of us were growing up here.
I know it's funny. Like I think about my 13-year-old, and there's always still this focus on live sports being so key to viewership being still being up in that space. But my son looks at the highlights and he never watches a full game anymore. So thinking about the future of live sports, and obviously he cares about his athletes that he finds important. But I think you're right in that they're more interested in learning about them in different ways and unique spaces than ever before. And that kind of leads me to a question for you, around, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, or even metaverse experiences. What do you think? How can you explain what your thoughts are on the current state of digital content for consumers, for marketers and brands, and for the platforms and the publishers themselves?
Look, a few different points of view here. I think one is that I love that new mediums are developing within a medium. So what I mean by that is you're see what you just mentioned, whether it's Reels or TikTok or YouTube Shorts. Those are all new mediums within social media. We used to think of YouTube as short form content, and now we're saying short form content is actually a TikTok, it's a Reel, it's a short. And I think what that is sub 1 minute content has allowed us to create new formats, new ways of storytelling. So I think anytime you have new mediums, there's opportunity for innovation, there's opportunity for disruption, and there's opportunity for failure as well. So I read a report the other day that said, all of this platform proliferation is actually leading to an oversupply of content that's out there today. And I think we've all probably have anecdotes of just, how much content we're being thrown at each day. And, I think what you're also seeing is if you go on what I just said of TikTok or Reels or Shorts, there's a good chance you're going to see the same exact piece of content on each of those platforms. And that's a lazy way of duplicating efforts. And I think that's where I think you're going to see a lot of failure. I think you'll start to see a lot more excitement around people who really grasp the human element of storytelling that needs to continue and to be up leveled around these new platforms that cut through the clutter. So I think in terms of where, if I'm a marketer, if I'm a publisher, if I'm an audience member, I really want to see better narrative based storytelling, and that's fine if the format is 10 seconds or 10 minutes, but do better on the storytelling. And that's really the key to really cutting through the clutter that is, or that oversupply of content that's out there today.
In advertising or marketing, we used to call that match luggage, right? You create the same piece of content for everything. And there was an efficiency play there because if you didn't hit someone here, you'd hit them there. But you're right. The audiences are different. Back when I was at the NBA, 2 decades ago at this point, the league was very protective of the monetization opportunities around the content and the sports. And it was $1 billion deals with ESPN or Turner or NBC at the time. And they would block everybody else out. And early on, as companies like yours or as this creator economy has become a significant force, it's allowed individuals and others to build other brands, right? Content businesses. But are there recent or somewhat recent examples of successful integrations or partnerships with how you've engaged creators to leverage their influence in the sports and entertainment space that isn't threatening, but is actually supportive and collaborative with either athletes or the leagues and teams?
Yeah, so I would say two examples come to mind here. One of the partnerships that we've done as a company is that we launched our own creator programs. We're actually hiring creators to come on to partner with us full time to build with us. We're giving them a platform to build. They're going to they have a salary. So where a lot of creators are struggling to make ends meet at a lower level, we're providing a platform to build for themselves, to build for us in a collaborative nature. And I think that's what this world is about. The sharing economy, the collaborative nature. The best content always gets shared and amplified. And then at a much larger scale, we partnered with YouTube around their shorts product for the World Cup in Doha, and we brought 25 different creators from around the world, large creators, and really we're working with them to show the World Cup through their lens. And I think that's really where the future of sport is going, is allowing these creators to do what they do best, to exist in their own formats, but taking these prized rights, these prized sports, and showcasing it in a different way to their audiences. And so that was a real success for us. And we did that in multiple languages. It was in English, it was in Arabic, it was directed to the Middle East, it was directed to Europe, it was directed to the States. And I think that was a really powerful example of what we are of the opportunity within the creator and the sports space.
So as far as like audiences, Gen Z and the younger audiences are obviously consuming a ton of content. So how does Whistle tailor that to resonate to the sort of these more digital native demos?
We had this aha moment a few years ago. When you're sort of trying to define your right to win, you try to develop the matrix of where your competition is, where you are, where's the white space, and ultimately we came up with this 2x2. We kept putting Whistle in the middle, and for a while people were like, "You can't be everything to everyone. Like, why are you in the middle? You have to choose a box." And what we said is, no, 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 no. We're not going to be defined by what people thought looking backwards. We're actually defining a new box of the audience, and that new box is actually at the intersection of multiple passion points. So it does sit in the middle. And by the way, we're not trying to be everything to everyone, but if you really look at the consumer today and you look at sports and sports consumption, they are defined. This audience, this next generation of fans, they're defined very differently than all of us. As I said, when going back to ESPN and all of us right here, we were defined really by our regional and local satellite broadcast, what we could see on TV, and probably the fandom of our parents. Today, audiences are global by nature because of social media. So they're not defined in that regional bucket. And because of social media, they're able to see these athletes, they're able to see these entertainers, they're able to see their lives from various sides, whether it's them traveling, whether it's the music that they listen to, it's the video games that they play. And so when you're thinking about creating for this audience, you have to understand that there isn't necessarily a perfect box, but there is a new box that they've created, and it is this intersection of passion points, and those passion points aren't necessarily the same for everyone, which is why in our business we have over 50 different show formats, and they resonate with a variety of different passion points. But the through line of all of them is everything that we're creating it's positive, it's uplifting, it's relatable, it's made to feel like it's accessible, and you can see yourself in that content.
Well, so I was going to ask if this is purely generational as far as where the growth potential is, meaning you can continue to reach within this age range or socio-psycho demographic set of criteria? Or do you see potential for teaching people in our generation and older about new ways to consume, right? 20 years ago, we were all, as you said, watching and consuming in different ways. Or do you grow by continuing to expand as Gen Alpha moves up? Or is it a combination of all?
It's yes, and it's both, because you're seeing quote older generations, whether it's my generation, my father's generation, you're seeing them engage in different ways, whether that's quote cord cutting and buying a direct to consumer streaming package, whether that's joining some of the social platforms because of what they're reading or what they're seeing their friends or their grandkids or their kids. So I think it's almost a push pull. Like you're getting it. Both sides are going to be impacted and are going to drive the future of how sport is consumed. And I think that's ultimately going to lead to some interesting questions, and we're already seeing it around what does that mean for how the future of sport is actually created. Are the economics really there? And I think we're going to be seeing, and already are. We're seeing rumors of ESPN being sold off. We saw Barstool sold back to Dave. We're seeing the crumbling of the RSN networks around Major League Baseball. So I think we're seeing signs that existing or legacy models are going to have to be reimagined.
As you're thinking about the platforms, the consumer, and the content opportunity, right? As a social media marketer early on, I was fixated on finding the right integrations where brands and marketers could engage with their consumers, engage with creators, right? We talk about authenticity and storytelling, and you guys kind of come at it from the opposite side, but there is a meeting in the middle. It's not just straight sponsorship opportunities, but again, you guys do this integrated storytelling as well as anyone. Are there certain guiding principles? You talked about being relatable, but as far as the content itself, any requirements that everything has to have or it has to look like, or is it really catered to more niche community fandoms at this point?
We were born onto social platforms. So we formally launched in 2014. I think the only video platform was YouTube. I mean, Vimeo was certainly, or Vivo was certainly there, but I think in terms of main platforms that are video based today, it was really YouTube. So we were born onto social. So we know how to create, and we've been creating in the social space. So we've developed these 50 plus formats, through trials and tribulations. And we've also done a lot of research and analytics, both proprietary and third party, to really understand, the platforms, how to be successful on those platforms, the content, the audience. So really all the different pieces. And then also obviously the commercial lens. What's important to brands, and how to incorporate them in authentically into the conversation. And I think what we like to do is we like to incorporate those brands and our partners into formats that we already have, or derivatives of those formats.
Would they ever hire you though to create something for them, or is that not a model that you guys like to work with?
No, it is a model that we work with. So we do have a part of our business that is more agency focused. So we will create content for them, for their platforms, that to resonate with their audience based on insights and our expertise. So we'll take our prowess as a media publisher, and we'll bring that to our partners exactly in that approach. But I think if you want to work with us as a publisher, what we've seen is when we can take an existing format or something that's a derivative, not perfectly the same, and pair that with a brand, with what their goals are. We're very successful with that. And sometimes we'll co-develop new formats with brands. And the intention there is that when we do it, we don't want to do one-off. We may launch a series with a brand, but the goal is to keep going beyond that.
Please pardon this brief pause as I read some words from our sponsor. Elevate your snacking game with Nature Valley granola bars. Perfect for all life's adventures. Perfect anytime, anywhere. Whether you're conquering a new trail or just your own backyard, find the perfect bar for wherever you are.
So you've worked with some of the biggest and the best athletes out there, and they're obviously major impacts on many, many people's lives. How do you think, like over the last few decades, how do you think that sort of influence that athletes has had over communities, how that's evolved over the last several decades?
Yeah, I recently, I think I wrote a short thing on LinkedIn about this, about Messi again coming to the MLS, and comparing that to, Jordan or Serena, or the home run race of between Sosa and McGuire.
1998.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the energy, the excitement around that, back at the time, and that was all really done via linear TV, right?
Hmm.
This was late 90s, and that was seen as a catalyst for deepening fan engagement. It was helping the league's overall narrative. But I think the difference today is we're in this massive digital age where, going back to the power of social media, uh, it allows for that more real-time engagement, more storytelling opportunities, more opportunity to make things accessible and interactive. So the power of a messy goal that 10 minutes later has been amplified globally, across fans, creators, other athletes. I think the power that these athletes have today is unlike anything that we've ever seen, I think it's a great force of good, for all the fans and what they're seeing. Having the right story, the right narrative that can be told across different platforms. I think that power for today and for the future is unlike anything from generations past.
It just seems like you're humanizing these. Normally we look at these people as gods, and now we're like adding a full human element to who they are as well, which I think makes them a lot more relatable, which is great.
Well, it also shows the variety and versatility and creativity beyond just their physical prowess, right? Not everyone is going to be comfortable telling stories or being humorous or entertaining in certain ways. But those that embrace it, I feel like we are seeing a different side of them. One thing that I think you guys do particularly well in terms of leading on an innovative front, both with creativity, but also with technology, has been through acquisitions, through partnerships. You guys have made a number of strategic investments in your tenure, and I think that speaks to and comes as much from your background as anything else. But what excites you about where we are with this evolution and convergence of technology, creativity, and even new data that we wouldn't have had access to a few years ago?
Yeah, I think we're asking, different questions today. I think I was on a call earlier, and one of the questions came up is like, what does it mean to be a social first organization? And that's not, that's a big, more profound question, is sort of rallying your entire corporation, around this concept of being social first. So what does that mean for the things that you need to be thinking about in terms of communications, your stakeholders, your partners? What does it mean in terms of the people you need to hire? What does it mean in terms of the people you need to partner with? So I think there's really interesting implications for where we are right now, on the state of social, and I think from our perspective, we used to joke back in the day about, where the commercialization was. It was social pennies, digital dimes, and TV dollars. I think today we're probably at social maybe half dollars, maybe more. So I think the commercial potential of these platforms continues to grow, and I think we're still in early innings. So I get excited about it. It's definitely going to be bumpy. So being adaptable, not overcommitting to any one platform is important. I think that's something that we've been very focused on throughout our tenure, is making sure that our distribution is diversified enough. Because when you are building on someone else's real estate, things can happen. So it's important to be nimble, have the ability to adapt, and evolve.
So before we get into our funner questions,
And more grammatically accurate questions, obviously.
sorry, it's the COVID. It's the COVID. You met Al, our lovely. Is he our co-host, Matt?
He's an announcer. Let's not promote him
He's
until
our
he fully
announcer.
earns it.
I love Al.
Okay, good. So, how do you feel about AI, and what do you feel like its place is in content creation? Is there a place for it?
Absolutely, there is a place for AI, and I think, as we've talked to our team about, right now we're in an experimentation phase. So let's experiment with as many tools that we can find. Let's learn from them. Let's talk about them. How can we incorporate them? Let's have fun with them. We're playing on formats where we're using AI to in conjunction with human-based storytelling. So we're having fun with it. I don't think our intention is to use AI from a content perspective to just replace the content that we're creating today. I think what I worry about on AI is that it is going to create an even worse oversupply of content that's out there. There's tools out there from a sports landscape, which I think are great in the sense that they work with various teams and give them the ability to effectively real time clip highlights by athlete. It could be if it's NBA, it could be by slam dunks, it could be by 3-pointers, it could be by jump shot. And then distribute those out to a variety of different audience cohorts. So I think that's cool, but I think you're going to have a lot more people doing that, and so ultimately it's going to look fairly similar. Now, I think the opportunity there is, okay, how do you layer on again? I think the key word through this whole conversation is probably storytelling. How do you layer on the storytelling and the right narrative to that? How do you layer on that human factor, that human element? And I think where I'm excited, if you look at some of the social platforms, they're already deprioritizing UGC content, right? So their algorithms can detect it, they can understand it. The monetization is different on some of those platforms, and they're going to do the same. They are or have announced the intention to do the same on AI. So the more shortcuts that people are going to take, I think it's not going to show immediate benefits on social media platforms in terms of commercialization. So I think AI used the right way is going to empower all of us to be a lot more productive and to be part of our creative process that helps us ultimately create better content that's more engaging.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see what creators can do with it as a tool. I think one of your earliest partners, if not the first, the Dude Perfect guys, creating trick shots, but doing so in a way that was personable and fun and compelling. I don't want anyone and everyone to be able to make artificial content that puts those guys in a corner and just makes it seem passe. I would love to see what they could do with it. But at the same time, you also have tools and technology that we can use to identify trends and unlock new sources of data that that we didn't have access to before. And that trend prediction is fun for me as a sports fan. I mean, I loved MMA before it became popular. Now everyone's talking about pickleball. In our town, girls flag football is the sport that everyone seems to be playing and going crazy over. So for you and in your perch and your purview of being able to see all these interesting things that are happening, what do you think is the next big sport or activity that gains mainstream awareness that I should be training my kids on now so they can become either the next professionals or content creators and capturers of that to monetize?
So I really like this league called Kings League. It's out of Spain. It's a soccer league, 7-on-7 format, but it's a new format. So the game format's a bit different than traditional
They still
soccer
use their
or
feet though, right? Still feet only.
still use their feet, but
Okay.
interestingly, the way the game starts is a water polo start. So everybody starts on the end line and runs to the middle to get the ball. You can you
That's
can
like
sub.
dodgeball too. It's like dodgeball.
So well, it's also like hockey. You could sub on the fly, and then there's all other sort of interesting X factors and rules around this. But also it's distributed on Twitch, and there's creators that are involved in each one of the teams. So I think they're doing something really interesting at an early stage, and ultimately it should lead to a fairly compelling commercial model. But to your point on what's going to be mainstream, I don't know if the future needs to be about mainstream awareness. I think there's been this atomization of a sports fan because of social media. The social media has allowed for a lot of these emerging leagues to come back or to proliferate or to start or even to come back. So slam ball, for example, was what,
Mhm.
20 plus years ago, just had its first season in 20 years, and its resurgence was driven by a massive TikTok campaign that pushed for it, and then they raised some capital and sort of rebuilt that league. But social, it's basically trampoline slam dunking, and it's basketball meets slam dunking meets trampolines, and
And
you
there's
get
full contact. It's
and it's
it's
full
harsh
contact.
but
Yeah,
fun. Yeah.
it's fun. It's super interesting. It's exciting, and it's ripe for something that is engaging and entertaining on social. So I think those are sports, to my point, that you didn't necessarily know right now, and so I don't know if the future necessarily has to be mainstream, and I think we need to prepare for a world where we think differently and build differently, where multi-million or billion-dollar rights fees are the exception rather than the norm. And so if we challenge ourselves to almost, what needs to be true if I'm creating a new league, if that's not ultimately going to be the end goal. So then how do I need to create this, right? And what does that look like? And I think we're seeing a lot of people start to come at this, but I also think there's a ton of capital that's been raised against even new leagues that are just stuck trying to replicate a traditional model. And to your point, Matt, finding that mainstream awareness because they're getting broadcast or linear distribution, and I think that's ultimately going to be more often a mistake than beneficial. So I'm excited for a world where there's new sports, new formats, new tournaments, new leagues, new properties that are being built, that are leveraging the tools. Val, you said about your son, a 13-year-old son, and what he watches, that are leveraging those tools that are built for him and his friends differently as a primary audience, not as an afterthought.
Well, that's what social first means to me, right? It's not necessarily the platform it's on, it's the way that people engage around it. Gone may be the days where we're watching football together in someone's living room with 30 people. And now it's about sharing and engaging content with each other, or even in real life where we're talking about it, but doing so in a way that fosters new types of engagement. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
I love it.
You and me both.
So, what is Michael Cohen's go to platform or channel for content? More importantly, what makes you laugh besides Matt? He is very funny. And what captures and holds your attention
Good
besides your lovely
question.
wife?
Uh, Yeah, she does. I would say, well, okay, it's a tricky question because as someone who has built a business across all the social media platforms, I'd like to say that I love all of my children equally. But as someone told me at different points, you like some of them more than others. So, but look, for me,
Especially
all
on
of
road
them,
trips, by the way. Road
yeah,
trips are
that's
where you really pick favorites.
Um, so look, I mean, look, depending on the time of day or what I'm doing, YouTube for various content, Snap for other, TikTok, Reels, X or Twitter. I'm across all of them. But what I would say, what's holding my attention these days, I really like a creator, Destroying, and he's got a really awesome story that started and actually was a partner of Whistle's early on. He was a creator that played college football and was forced to choose between his eligibility or staying focused as a creator, and ultimately he chose to become a creator, and he dropped his eligibility as a D1 athlete. And we were lucky enough to partner with him early on, and I think his content is awesome. I think what he's doing lately, he's got these 1v1 football games that he puts together, and he goes across the country to various high schools, colleges, and he brings people together, and it's one on one for $10,000, and you see this, on the field rawness, point of view, just pure competitive nature, sport in your face, and you can feel like the excitement. You feel like you're on the field. There's no helmets. It's not really about tackle. It's really about the competition aspect. So for me, when he does those, I find it super awesome. I find it unfiltered, and I think it's that unfiltered, unorchestrated environment, to me feels really natural and exciting to watch.
Yeah, that's it. The NIL piece of this is really compelling. I think back to some of the athletes who were stars in college who didn't really have that outlet or that opportunity, and I think what could have been, and even some of those who might have become or gone a different path that didn't make it in the pros, but might have become personalities in different ways. But we will save that for another episode when you come back in seasons 2, 3, and 4. But
Deal.
before we let you go, Mr. Michael Cohen, we are going to ask you 6 questions in our lightning round that we call Gone in 60 Seconds.
I like
Are
it.
you ready for that?
I'm
You
ready.
ready? Okay. So we are talking right around Labor Day weekend. What is your favorite season?
Fall.
Back to school, right? What were your best and worst subjects in school?
Best subject was math. Worst
Ooh.
subject is history.
So, what is a hobby or skill you've always wanted to learn, but you haven't yet had a chance to, that you will potentially embrace as you move into middle age here?
I really want to run a marathon. So I don't know if that's a hobby or a skill. But in terms
Certainly a
of,
skill.
It sounds like insanity is what it is.
yeah, I
Mhm.
think it's more around pushing myself. Just it's you versus you, and so just seeing sort of both the mental and physical agility of it. Maybe start with a half marathon.
Are you
Maybe
are you a runner?
I picked up running during our pandemic because that was just about what you could do. So I've started to get a bit more joy from it, and in a flow state when I run. I'm not a long distance runner, but I think that's something that eventually I would endeavor to do.
Well, if
Nice.
you need someone to drive around and chase you in his car, I'm happy to do that. But I don't drive 26 miles, let alone run. So, okay. Question number 4. I have, no lie, 3 Michael Cohens in my phone. How many other Michael Cohens do you know?
I know 1, 2. I know 5 other Michael Cohens, and
Wow.
one of them I went to high school with, and 2 of them I'm in a professional organization with, and others I just know from other folks. But yeah, a lot of Michael Cohens.
I've got 3.
Three also? 3 Michael Cohens
Yeah.
or 3 Valerie Vespas?
3 Michael Cohens.
Because there's only one that I know of, so.
So what do you? So let me pose the question right back to you. What am I in your phone as? How do you define your Michael Cohens?
Ooh.
I don't need to, because I know what everyone's individual email addresses are and how they pertain to each of you. But I've been trying to, and maybe this is so old school, but I've tried to associate photos or more recently avatars with people. And I am sharing a secret that I've very rarely share, but I create avatars for people. And some of them might be offensive. So the next time I see you and you ask me, I may run in the other direction. You definitely have the best head of hair of all the Michael Cohens I know.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So last question, Michael Cohen, CEO of Team Whistle. Can you whistle?
So
That's
somewhat.
good.
That whistling on command. Some people have to whip their lips. Some people will do the dog whistle, but you pulled it out and you
With a little
hit a
happy
home run.
tune. Yeah.
Well,
Bravo.
that's what AI whistling will do for you.
Well, we are all happier now having had the chance to talk with you. So thank you for the generosity of your time, your wisdom, your expertise, and for making us a part of your holiday vacation on such short notice.
Anytime. I appreciate the opportunity. I will talk to you both soon.
That concludes episode 8 of the Snarketing Podcast. Thanks for joining us, Michael. Love the videos and work your team does, and thanks for enlightening us. As for everyone else, see you next time.